Hey everybody, it's George. Before we get started, I have an important announcement about this episode. Okay, long story short, I deleted it. I deleted the episode because I had it labeled as Twin Peaks 3, and I, in my stupidity, thought that meant episode 3, which we covered in the last podcast, not part 3, where we talk about episodes 5 and 6. So, I deleted the podcast. Good news is, I still have Ben's half. Since we're recording this separately over Skype, we record our audio separately. So he sent me his half, and I'm going to listen to it, and then I'm just going to hit record, and I'm going to talk when Ben stops talking. The conversation is probably not going to sound right at all, but we'll try to fill in the gaps, and if there's something I can't make sense of at all, I'll just probably cut that out and put a fucking clip in. So, this is probably going to be the weirdest fucking thing, but it's also Twin Peaks The Return, so it's kind of appropriate. So, I hope you like the juice. I'm going to try to time this up perfectly. You like the juice?
Do you like the juice? This juice was fine. Not clearly as exciting as the previous juice, and I know what's coming in the next juice, so...
Yeah, welcome to Saturday Night Jive, where we talk about Saturday Night Live, mostly, but now we're talking about Twin Peaks The Return, because Jim Belushi's fucking in it. Also, I'm in the present, Ben's in the past. This is gonna be a weird fucking episode. Ben's gonna say something, but I don't know what it's about.
Hey, you wanna...
What do I want to do, Ben? Tell me.
As I say, you want to throw it out here like we're just doing anything we want to do. No, we're doing this because Jim Belushi was in this episode. Or one of these episodes.
Fuck,
I don't remember which one at this point.
That's right. We did finally see Jim Belushi, the reason we are allowed to watch Twin Peaks
And he
The
was
Return.
marvelous.
Oh, he was a delight. He scowled and he grimaced.
I've left you speechless in my analysis of Jim Belushi's performance in this episode.
Yeah, alright, well, let's start off with episode 5. In episode 5, what the fuck happens? We start with the lady I thought was Marilyn Roskjub, but it's not Marilyn Roskjub, and she is doing some evil shit. What?
I feel like you're going to leave that in.
What in?
Because now you're not editing these anymore, so now there's just going to be a weird domestic thing now.
What? Oh, well, we'll have to leave that up to the fucking mysteries of the universe, because that will never be explained.
It's a professional operation we have here.
Oh, it's far from it, my friend. Far from it. So again, I am recording this in the present. Ben, you are 2 weeks in the past. Oh, the things I could tell you about what's going to happen to you. But, that would take the mysteries out of life, I suppose.
Okay, first off, is that her name? Not the actress's name. The actual, we don't know who the actual one is. Is that the person you're thinking of? Is that her real name, or is that a name you made up to refer to the person?
Are you talking about Marilyn Roskjub? I believe I said that when we recorded the episode.
Marilyn Roskjub?
Marilyn
Roskjub? Is that... I feel like...
Roskjub. Roskjub?
Okay, but you looked it up. Like, you're not... That feels like something like you don't remember the actual name, so you went, I think it sounds like Loxjub.
That's how it's... The point is, it's not even fucking her in the episode, so that doesn't even matter. But my problem with Twin Peaks is things like this. They'll introduce these characters, and then they're fucking killed off.
Oh, this was your problem.
Yeah, who am I supposed to follow?
Well, of course, I alluded to it earlier. I happen to know enough. I've not been too spoiled, but I know that episode 8 is like a big mythology episode, and that we're going to talk about that next week.
Yeah.
So it's not like we have that much between, like, the first 4 episodes were mostly good. These 2, kind of drag a little bit, but, like, right away we got one more episode of whatever, and then the episode everybody loves. So I feel like, even with that feeling of maybe it's dragging, it's not going to drag for long. I mean,
it's a slow show. Since I'm recording this in the present, I have the hindsight. We've already recorded our episode for episode 8. And yeah, that's a good episode. But even once we get to episode 9 through 16, it's still a lot of fucking Dougie Jones. And it's just going to be Dougie Jones for a long-ass time. And then he's going to be Coop. But then the show's over. And it's like, well, why was I watching this in the first place?
Well, because you even said, like, I don't think I like, you've seen the show, I'm kind of relying on you a little bit, and you're like, I don't think she comes back, and then she comes back, so it's like, I can't trust anything you remember about this show.
Oh, I think you're referring to the 119 lady. Yes, I did tell you that she does not return. But yeah, we do see the 119 lady again. This is also hindsight. I've remembered this now. When I was watching the show when it aired, there was a lot of online chatter that the 119 lady was saying 911 in reverse, and that maybe she's some kind of weird lodge entity doing the backwards talk. Or maybe it's just random shit to get us from point A to point B. Who knows?
Well, I'm kind of in between those two places right now, because I feel like on some level I'm resigned to some of this stuff not coming back or coming together, because I've heard a lot of the disappointment with that element of the show, and I know you've talked about it. So, like when we get into Bob and his plan, like the people that he was hanging out with in like the first couple episodes, like, are they going to even come back, or is that going to connect to like this guy that this is like, there's some evil dude that's driving around running over children? Like, is that going to connect to that? Or because it feels like that's like an echo of the Renault brothers One-Eye Jack story, kind of, from the original. So I don't know, like, is that just another one of these side stories that everybody says never connect to anything? Or is that something I need to be paying attention to? I don't know. And I'm just kind of like, I don't know. Whenever I get to something where I'm like, I'm not sure I have to pay attention to this. And then I wonder, like, oh, should I? Is this a clue? Is this something that I'm, I don't know, one way or the other.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that that's always what Twin Peaks has been. I want it to be different because Fire Walk with Me was different. So I watched the entire series of Twin Peaks, and, there's some fucking soap opera shit that I don't care about. Packard Sawmill, who gives a fuck? But then Fire Walk with Me, I'm like, oh shit, this universe is insane, I want more of that, and now the return is more soap opera.
Well, it's weird because, like, on some level, like, I remember the very first scene of this show was the giant basically just giving us a bunch of, like, random clues, like, remember these things. And I'm trying to think back. I don't even remember this. I think one was, like, a sound, and one was a number, and, like, a name or something.
It was Richard and Linda. Richard and Linda, 430, two birds, one stone.
And then, like, hear the sounds.
And listen to the sounds.
And so it's like, but like, it was so obvious, like, here's some clues, here's some catchwords. It's like, you don't watch Doctor Who, but they do that, like, every season of Doctor Who, they'll have, like, a phrase. Like, in the first season, it was Bad Wolf. And it was like, they'd have it in graffiti on the wall. And then in the last episode, we find out what Bad Wolf is a reference to. And it's like an arc thing. So, but it's like just an obvious sort of thing that you're supposed to remember. So he's being obvious with that stuff. And then, so I'm assuming 119 is going to be a thing. Or maybe it's not.
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's a bunch of random shit that happens. Who the fuck knows? How important is Wally Brando going to be to the story? Maybe he's just some shit that happened. It's not that it has meaning. It's that we're looking for meaning. And sometimes it's just random shit.
Well, okay, yeah. Well, because, I mean, obviously we know now that this entire series, and in fact the entire mythology of Twin Peaks, hinges on a mid-2000s Billy Zane movie.
Oh, that's right. I forgot Ben is going to talk about this internet guy.
Oh, but I gotta talk about this. And
yeah, go ahead, Ben.
While we were watching the show. Last week, I mentioned that I did a deep dive of Twin Peaks videos, and I just wanted to reference, because I don't think I said what it was. It's the guy's channel is called Twin Perfect. So if you want to check it out, he did like a 4.5-hour video, and then he did like 2 follow-up videos. And as a result of me watching those, and I went back and watched the whole videos, YouTube started recommending other Twin Peaks theory videos to me. And just look up like Space Cadet Twin Peaks, and just go down a rabbit hole of crazy. I don't want to go into too much detail about it, because I want you to like look it up for yourself. Much like David Lynch will say, like, I want you to make your own interpretation. I don't want to tell you. Because, like, I developed this entire narrative of this guy's life based on his YouTube channel. Like, it just gets, like, weirder and weird. Like, he starts out, like, professional, like, oh, I'm just gonna give you my theory in, like, 10 minutes. And then his next video is, like, 2.5 hours. And he starts it, like, I've lost my job and my house, and I'm in a guy's apartment, but here's my theory, and it sucks. His theory's fucking dumb. It's... Basically, he thinks Audrey Horne dreamed up the whole show. But anyway... and I'm watching this, and like all his videos on YouTube are like a progression of analyzing Twin Peaks, ruining his life and getting him more and more disheveled. And I'm fascinated with this guy, Space Cadet. Look him up on YouTube. And then he has a whole series of videos where he watches the Twin Perfect video. He watches a 4.5 video, and he takes 3 parts in 7 hours to do it. And I watched probably a good 2 hours of that, and it's him sitting in the dark, talking about how this guy stole all of his ideas, but missed all the brilliance of it because of all the dumb references to Billy Zane movies he thinks are important. And he's just and I'm watching him do it, and I'm at work watching him.
Yeah, and now
and it's just like,
and now you're on a podcast talking about a guy watching another guy's YouTube video. Whoa, it's like the 8th dimension. But I have also watched this guy's video that you're talking about now because I'm in the future.
That I've already watched the full video of. I couldn't bring myself to watch all 7 hours of this guy's video because a lot of it was just like petulant bitchiness. But just the fact, because like his whole theory hinges on like Audrey Horne dreamed it up, but she dreamed up like Sherilyn Fenn was in Two Moon Junction, and that's an element because there's a truck driver in that, so that's the Leo character reflected in her dream, and it's like, no. David Lynch didn't incorporate Two Moon Junction into this fucking show, but then, like, he's watching the other guy's video, he's like, he's not even mentioning Two Moon Junction. I mean, how can I take any of this shit seriously if he's not gonna get the obvious connection to Two Moon Junction and fucking The Hidden and this Billy Zane movie where I guess he's on the run from the mob and gambles, so that must be the inspiration for Dougie. I'm fucking fascinated by it.
Yeah, like I said, I have since watched it. I watched it on the background while I was working, and it's very annoying because he just watches the other guy's video and then pauses it every like 20 seconds and goes, well, here's why he's wrong, but he like doesn't let the original guy finish like his thought. And I'm like, maybe he's going somewhere. You cut him off mid-sentence. Anyway, oh, but there is validity to the Audrey Horne theory. That's something that we might discuss later. Well,
like, but the difference between the two videos, like the first guy, the Twin Perfect guy, his theories are most, like, whether you believe in them or not, they're mostly, like, consistent with the show. It's just stuff from the show. He doesn't insert his own shit into it, and he basically rejects all of Mark Frost's influence. It's like, it's all David Lynch. And then the other guy, Space Cadet, he's like, no, Mark Frost is the key to all of it. You have to read the fucking Secret Diary of Laura Palmer and all that shit. And it's like, I feel like none of that shit matters, right? Like, none of that is canon, right?
I think it's all canon. I mean, I think everything with Twin Peaks is canon. I mean, it happened that way. You can't say it didn't. And then there's stuff in the Secret History book that kind of comes up in the show. We'll see Harry Dean Stanton's character in this episode returning from Fire Walk with Me. They go into his kind of backstory in Secret History, and that's kind of explained.
Well, no, and that's... Yeah.
We're talking about two different things.
We're tempted now. I think we're trained because of all the shows that were inspired by Twin Peaks, like Lost, have trained us to watch all shows like that, because Lost very much was that. They definitely wanted to layer, like every time there'd be like a book on Lost, you'd have to look it up on Wikipedia and go like, what does this book have to do with it? What is the author? Is there anytime there's a name, it's like, oh, that's a philosopher and that must mean this. And so I feel like now we're all trained to do that in the internet age, but David Lynch didn't evolve to that point. Like, he wasn't doing that then and he's not doing it now, and we just gotta like remind ourselves, like, no, he's part of this is he's just fucking with us.
Well, I don't know if he's fucking with us, but he's also just not, he's not bogged down in the minutia like the fans are. When watching this series, I keep bringing that up, but watching this series as it played out in real time, I would go online after each episode and read people's theories, and they were all just random shit like, oh, did anyone notice the coffee cup in this scene? Well, that's a clue. That means that this is going to happen and this is going to happen. And it's all just batshit stuff you came up with, but then people treat that as canon, and you can't treat stuff from your imagination as real.
But that's interesting, though, because, like, I think David Lynch is, to his credit, more self-aware than a lot of these analyses give him credit for. Because, like, the people that would watch that scene and go, like, oh, there's clearly a clue to the mystery here.
Scribbles.
Whereas we both watched that scene, I think took the same thing out of it, which is he's making fun of people who would watch that scene and think that. It's the same with, like, the bunny scene. It's like he knows... Like, David Lynch is smart enough to understand how people are watching his show, and he's tweaking that, while at the same time doing a lot of things that they're expecting him to do. So it's weird that, like, you have to suss out the joke from the reality.
Oh, well, okay, so we're talking about the Scribbles scene here in episode 6, where Agent Cooper is in Dougie Jones's body, and he's, like, pretty much brain dead. And he's just drawing little scribbles on paper. Seemingly they mean nothing. And then he hands them to his boss. And his boss looks at him. And then he looks, like, off in the margins. And he finds all the clues. Like, he sees how it all fits together. He puts the pieces together because of Dougie's random scribbles. So I think that's David Lynch trying to tell us how we're supposed to watch the show. We're focused on the scribbles, but we need to be looking past the scribbles. The scribbles being the soap opera shit.
Well, no, I think I get that scene to the extent that it fits into the mythology and isn't just a joke. I think, because previous to that, we had a scene where he accused his coworker of lying, and it was similar to when he was seeing which slot machines would get the payout. Something from the lodge, presumably. I'm getting at this point that it's Mike trying to help him along so that he doesn't die before he fulfills his mission. And part of that is he sees a thing over Tom Sizemore's face and goes, oh, I know he's lying. And this was a continuation of that. What the guy was looking at was his attention was being drawn by the doodles to the inconsistencies in the forms that was proving that Tom Sizemore was lying.
Right, but are we supposed to be paying attention to the scribbles, or are we supposed to be paying attention to the things outside of the scribbles? How important are the scribbles to our understanding of the whole picture?
Well, because he was clearly comparing the different papers, so to me, I thought, and like it like went down to where the signature should be, and then it went up to the invoice part. So, and he's like kind of tracking it. So I'm thinking his attention was pulled back and forth to where it needed to be in order to glean something related to that previous. Because again, we're assuming that the two things relate to each other. Maybe they don't, or at least I'm assuming that. But yeah, that's what I took from that.
All right, so you're saying the scribbles are pointing us in the right direction. That's interesting, because I might be reading too much into this, but I think this is David Lynch saying, look, there's a lot of scribbles in this show, but it will all add up to something. You know, I know we're going all over the place. We still haven't heard back from Matthew Lillard yet. Who was that fucking mountain man that disappeared in the jail cell? I don't know. Yeah, we got a dwarf assassin now. Well, but maybe he'll show up in something. We're going back to the dude from Mulholland Drive with the Office.
I think it's the latter, because that's the whole point of that, at least on a metaphorical or symbolic level. It's that they don't mean anything to us in the specific, because we don't work for this insurance company, so we don't know, what they're pointing to. We just know that they're pointing to somewhere important. And it's that journey that character goes on is the same journey that we're supposed to go on. So 119 doesn't necessarily mean anything to us because we don't understand the context, but it means something, and maybe down the line we'll get an echo of that'll make the connection. Oh, 119, that must be a reference to this. Or maybe we won't, but if we think about it hard enough, maybe something adds up to 119. So it's sort of telling us, like, you don't need to worry about it or making sense now. It's not going to. You don't have all the pieces yet, but the pieces are there for you to find. It's just up to you to find them.
So there is a puzzle that we're trying to put together, but maybe we just have too many pieces? Like the jigsaw puzzles got mixed up? Yeah, maybe 119 doesn't mean anything. Why are we looking for meaning in it? It could just be meaningless. It could just be that we needed to see that scene where Dougie's car blows up, and that car just happens to be next to the 119 lady.
But and I'm watching that whole thread, assuming that this is some kind of serendipitous event that will eventually lead back to Dougie, because obviously they were trying to kill Dougie, didn't realize that he wasn't in the car, I guess, or I don't know, but like somehow that's gonna all kind of come back. Like all of these threads, everything's sort of being manipulated on a cosmic level to get him, I assume, by Mike again, or at least by the forces that want Dougie to become Coop again. All of this is sort of pushing him in that direction.
That's what it appears to be. It appears that Mike is guiding Coop in his journey back to, I guess, reality, or wherever he's in now in Dougie Jones land. Alright. What happens in episode 5 and 6? Not a whole lot, honestly. Is there anything huge that happens? I can't really remember. We get a lot of Dougie Jones.
Well, to be fair, these two bleed together.
They do.
Oh, wait.
It feels like one big long episode. Episode 5 and 6.
Well, especially because you mentioned, like, it begins with a lady's introduction and then it ends with her death in the next episode. So, yeah, it feels like a 2-hour movie almost.
Yeah. It's perhaps we have stumbled upon the best way to watch Twin Peaks. Watch 2 hours, record a podcast, do some other shit throughout the week, watch 2 hours, do a podcast, repeat. I think that's the way David Lynch intended us to watch it. I don't want to put words in the guy's mouth. Man, I talked a lot here because there's a big long dead space before Ben talks. What do I want to talk about? Well, let's see. Episode 5. Yeah, fucking Dougie Jones. What else? Oh, Mr. Strawberry. We do get Mr. Strawberry. We're introduced to our new characters. We're reintroduced to some old characters. Dr. Jacoby, we see Nadine. We see Shelly the waitress. What else we see? Bobby, but we already saw him.
With Jim Belushi and Robert Nepper, who I did not know was in this show.
And then Jim Belushi, I don't even know who Robert Nepper
I don't know if you know, has since been horrifyingly Me Too'd.
Nope. I did not know that until you just said it.
Yeah, so we talk about all the people that have died in this show. His career has died. He will no longer be in anything. The other guy, I guess they're implied to be mobsters of some stripe. They own or run or enforce the casino rules that Dougie was at the casino. He won all the money. Obviously, they don't like people winning all that money, so I assume they're after him to get it back. And Jim Belushi is one of those guys, and it doesn't do much in this episode, but it was enough that it made an impact.
Yeah, and he has he's not like an important character, but definitely things happen that are important that he is part of. So like he does spur the plot.
But we got a lot. We found out what Dr. Jacoby was doing with the shovels.
That's right. He's selling them. I
appreciated that.
He's selling shit digging shovels now, and he's talking about it on the radio in his shack shed. And Nadine's listening.
Well, evidently he has become sort of an Alex Jones type, and is railing against the ills of society, which I got the sense early on that that's kind of what this show is in a certain sense. Like, the darkness of the Twin Peaks world as a reflection of our modern world and how dark the world has gotten since the original Twin Peaks, that Twin Peaks itself has lost some of its luster and become a darker place. I think that's definitely a theme of this show. But at the same time, you have a character like Dr. Jacoby who's sort of like making a joke out of the people who would make that observation, even though as the show's doing it. So it's kind of weird. Like, should we be seeing him as a figure of mockery or not?
Friends, we all live in the mud. In the shit! Shovel your way out of the shit! This is your shiny gold shovel. 2 coats, guaranteed. Shovel your way out of the shit and into the truth. Dig yourself out of the shit. $29.99. That's right. Only $29.99 plus shipping. Accept no substitute. Get yours now.
Well, that's the thing. I feel like, and I've heard that complaint by a lot of people who did not like The Return, saying it just doesn't feel like Twin Peaks. It feels like a different show. And I would argue, yeah, I mean, yes, that's true, but I like the differences, and especially because a lot of the things that they've added or changed replace the stuff that I never really liked in the original show. A lot of the soap opera stuff. The fact that, like, we've technically seen James, but I haven't had to give a shit about James and his storyline. But so this episode, it's like, oh, fuck, Norma Jean. And you want to go like, oh, isn't it great that Norma Jean's back? I never really gave a shit about Norma Jean, and I still don't. And it's like, oh, Imagine a Mech now has who, for the record, can't even remember the character's name, but she's got a daughter now, Shelley. And it's Amanda Seyfried, and they're doing drugs, and it's like, I will only care about that to the extent that it connects to some of the mythology stuff that I'm enjoying, but I've heard that stuff doesn't connect, that it's just random.
Yeah, most of it is random. But that's kind of what the whole, the original series was, too. I said it in the last 2 episodes, I think. I said this feels not like Twin Peaks, but like its own individual show. But it is like Twin Peaks. This is kind of what the show always was. There was a really interesting main storyline, and then just a lot of other Packard Sawmill shit that was, like, colorful and interesting, but you didn't really care about it. Like, do I care that Piper Laurie's embezzling money from the Chinese government? No, I don't care. Do I care anything about fucking Hank Jennings coming back from jail and stirring up trouble? Harry Truman and Josie Packard's love affair? No, I don't care about any of that. I watched it, didn't mind watching it, but I was more focused on Coop. So anyone complaining about, like, oh, I don't like that this isn't in Twin Peaks, like, I hate that we're in Buckhorn, North Dakota for the season premiere. Fuck it, that's what the show is.
And I feel like we both took that moment in the previous episode differently, and I feel like we are also reacting to this stuff differently, where I feel like all of the references to Twin Peaks that seem to make it, they seem to want to evoke the feeling and the tone and the atmosphere of Twin Peaks. They seem deliberately out of place to me. That scene in particular with him crying at the image, that where the music swells for the first time. I guess if you're more nostalgic for Twin Peaks than maybe I am, you would just think that, oh, now it feels like Twin Peaks. But to me, it feels like this is David Lynch saying, this is different. This moment clearly doesn't fit with what we're doing now. And every time they cut back to Norma Jean in this episode, I felt the same way. It's like, you know, you have a scene where you see a woman and she's like having a nice fun conversation with one of the waitresses, and then the next time you see her, this little boy gets run over brutally by this character who I guess is our villain now. I don't know if they've really established who he is as a character other than he's a drug runner of some stripe. I assume he has a deeper connection going forward, but like that's clearly not anything that ever happened in Twin Peaks. Like that kind of hyper violence where a child just dies and the killer gets away and like people are just looking on. So I feel like it's telling us like, no, we're moving on from, oh, isn't it fun that Norma Jean owns the Double R Diner and like that kind of slow paced soap opera stuff. This show is constantly telling us that no longer works in modern television.
Well, that's what the original show was, too. I mean, the original show was also always kind of taking the piss out of Dynasty and shit like that. But now it's, that's 25 years
I don't really remember
later.
much about the 5th episode, honestly.
Neither do I. I just scrolled through it. The only thing that happens of note is Dr. Jacoby and Mr. Strawberry.
I mean, and just the fact, because like I kind of compare him to Alex Jones, and I think the line, of course, is these shovels that he's selling to dig you out of the shit is the instant touchstone of, yes, he is making these complaints, but he's full of shit. He is just doing it to sell shit. And, all the worst people, the people that you wouldn't want to be watching this stuff, Ben Horn's brother, Nadine, the people who are going to take the wrong thing from it and take this and run with it. I imagine their storylines are all about how this kind of perverts their minds. But just like the idea that like he's full of shit when he says it, but when the show says it, it makes that same point basically that the world is corrupt now. We're supposed to believe the show, but not Jacoby, I guess.
You got me. I stopped talking about Dr. Jacoby a long time ago. Damn me being 2 weeks ahead of you.
Well, because I also get the sense that David Lynch just loves these characters in a very kind of earnest, like, non-mythological way. Like, it's, like, he doesn't love the show for the reasons we love the show. He loves the show because Big Ed has a, is like a regular guy, and he has a, an unrequited love. Like, he loves those little mundane moments of just interpersonal connections between these characters. So he's just going to play around with that stuff, and meanwhile we're going like, oh, what does this mean? Is this, whatever. He's not doing that. We're doing that.
Right. And when you watch the original series, you're not like, oh wait, what's the meaning behind Audrey Horne and Billy Zane's love affair? You're not looking for meaning in that because it's part of the soap opera stuff. So maybe I'm watching this show wrong, where I'm thinking it's all going to connect in this weird cosmic thing, and everything's going to make sense, and all the pieces are going to fit together. But much like the original Twin Peaks, you're not going to get any answers because there's no fucking answers. It's just, a lot of it is the story of a town and like what the fuck they're doing during their daily lives. There's no mystery there.
Which is a fucking vampire, by the way.
Oh,
Ernie Hudson has not aged since Ghostbusters, as far as I'm concerned.
That's right. We talked about Ernie Hudson a little bit. Yeah, Ernie Hudson makes an appearance in this episode. Somebody else made an appearance in episode 5 that made me go like, oh, hey.
Oh, by the way, I had a question. The dead body, because we have that scene in the morgue, and I think they ran prints on that body. Is that body the general?
Spoiler?
Was I supposed to know that already?
I don't think so, but that's a spoiler. I guess I will spoil it for you. Now I know, because we've already watched the next 2 episodes, that they reveal that in episode 7. But no, at this point we did not know that. It's just a big fat man's body that's all cut up all nice and gross-like, with a big open, like, fucking head-neck wound where you can see inside the neck hole. You didn't see that shit in the original.
Yeah, which, I mean, again, talking about just how much grosser this show is. I mean, it's similar to, like, one of the first episodes of the show where they was it Teresa Banks is the name, I think, of the dead girl that they... No, that's from the movie. No, it's Laura Palmer that they're looking at, where they pull the things out of her nails. Like, they've had stuff like that in the show before, but this, like, you see, like, the slit, like, the where this head was severed. But, like, yeah, so it's like, it's just kind of like a dark version of the same thing.
Yeah, it's gross now. Couldn't get away with that shit in ABC Primetime.
But but you mentioned that ABC Primetime.
Oh shit,
was this
I did.
The kind of stuff that he always wanted to do in Twin Peaks, but couldn't because of the show, like the nature of when it aired and what it was on, or is this we're making it different on purpose?
I don't know. Well, it's also 25 years later, so it's gonna look different. It's gonna be more gruesome. I mean, it's on Showtime rather than ABC, so they can swear and show nudity. And I think he probably always wanted the show to be dark, because Fire Walk With Me is so dark. And, like, talk about the original series, the death of Maddie Ferguson in the second season is one of the, like, darkest things that has ever been on television. Like, paid cable, broadcast TV. It's fucking twisted. So the show was always dark and creepy.
Well, but I mean, that's the thing, because with that you also have the movie of Fire Walk With Me, which a lot of people didn't think was a valid conclusion, but I think in retrospect we look at that as the end of the original show, and providing a lot of answers for things, even if it didn't seem like it was providing answers for things. It was a resolution in the only way that David Lynch could resolve Twin Peaks, and now we have this, which is like, well, what does this mean? Does this mean that didn't actually resolve everything? Are we gonna get a resolution? I happen to know that we don't. I know people were disappointed that it was a cliffhanger, but was that the attempt at least? Because you mentioned he had plans for 18 episodes. Did he though? Because I know he complained that he wasn't gonna get the budget for the story he wanted to tell. But if so much of it is just Dougie Jones being Dougie Jones, I feel like he could have done that in 10 episodes.
Yeah, that was my biggest complaint with watching this series as it aired. I'm like, 10, man. 10 is like a nice round number. Why are we getting so much of this? I mean, I'm glad to have it back, but Do I need this much of it?
And I'm not just liking, I'm liking all the Dougie Jones stuff. I talked about it when we were watching it, because that's the thing with how dark this show is otherwise. I feel like if you didn't have Dougie Jones and his storyline to go back to, it would just be so soul-crushingly depressing that I could not watch it. If this whole show was that fucking asshole running kids over, like that tone and that level, and no fun Dougie Jones stuff to cut through it, then I don't know that I would enjoy it.
Yeah, I think, like, because what we wanted from Fire Walk with Me was we wanted Coop to wake up and we wanted him to beat the shit out of Bob. That's what we wanted. And then in the return, that's what we wanted. We wanted the first scene to be like Coop looking in the mirror and being like, oh shit, we're right back where we left off. But we can't do that, obviously, for so many reasons. And also, like...
Well, yeah, I mean, and obviously I can see a version of that in lesser episodes, in like 10 episodes, where, you know, he's Dougie for a few episodes, and then maybe the last 5, he's Coop again. I don't even think, is that, I mean, maybe you don't want to spoil that, but like, it's pretty late. Like, it's like the last, like, 2 or 3 episodes, right, that he comes back?
He's Dougie Jones for, like, the entire series, and then he's Coop, like, in the last 4 episodes.
Which, again, I'm fine with, but I get why that can be frustrating as well.
Yeah, it's because it was so much Dougie Jones, and we wanted Coop back. Like, we just wanted him to fucking be Coop again, and fucking solve the mystery. But
I believe it is, actually, now that I think about it, because remember we talked about it last week, the sockets that he goes through?
Oh, okay.
Where he goes through the 3 socket and the 15 socket? I think that's a reference to that.
Yeah.
The 15 socket is episode 15, where he wakes up.
16, 17, 18. Yeah, that would make sense, because I think it's the last 4 episodes. Yeah, it's like the last 4 episodes, and then he wakes up and he's Coop for the last 4 episodes of the season. And at that point, it's like, man, we have been fucking so long. One of us needs to fucking jizz at this point. Oh, wait, here's Robert Forster getting chewed out by his wife. I love that.
I did like that. Well, again, and then, like, that's the thing. Like, I'm not watching that scene and going, like, is that going to come back to anything? But it's just, I love putting Robert Forster through minor annoyances. It's just a thing I didn't think I would love as much.
Robert Forster's reactions to everything in this series. I could just watch Robert Forster react to shit. Just put different plates of food in front of Robert Forster's face and then cut to Robert Forster's reaction shot. That's a show.
Well, I'm assuming it's like an echo of Shelley and Leo. Like he's her Leo.
Sure. Whatever that means. I'm not sure what that's in reference to. But we do have to talk about Mr. Strawberry.
Do we? Because
we have to talk about Mr. Strawberry. Mr. Strawberry is the key to figuring this all out. Because I asked you
as we were watching that scene, like, was that a reference to something I should remember, either from the original show or from the past few episodes? Or is that another one of these self-aware jokes where it's like now Bob knows that we're analyzing it and he's fucking with us? Because that's actually going back to that Twin Perfect video. His theory is that certain characters know that they're in a TV show and are manipulating things in a very specific way. So, like, Bob knows that he's a TV character, and he knows that you're obsessed with the mystery, so part of his actions are just jerking you around so that he can distract you, so that he can do what he needs to do. So, like, is that something like that, where it's like, you know, they're gonna really want to know what Mr. Strawberry's about, and while they're looking at that, I'm over here doing my thing.
No, it's not. But there is something to that theory of people knowing they're in a TV show, but I actually want to save that conversation for next week, which I know that we do get into that conversation next week because we've already recorded it. But no, the warden gets upset when he hears Mr. Strawberry because it's something that it affects him when he hears it.
Or is that, maybe, I didn't realize that until you just said it. Was that a reference to something that only the warden knows about? Like, was that hit Bob... Like, that's a reference to something to do with the warden's life that we don't know about, but that's Bob telling the warden, like, I know something I shouldn't know about you, and therefore I am a threat. Like, is that...
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Strawberry's a goofy-ass name, but my interpretation of the scene when I first watched it was that, like, Bob, terrorized this warden when he was a little kid as Mr. Strawberry, you know? And then, like... So Mr. Strawberry was like the local ice cream man, you know, and he'd go around to all the kids. And then when he went to the warden, he'd like diddle them real good. And then, he said, Mr. Strawberry, Mr. Strawberry. And it's something that's been like repressed in this guy's subconscious forever. And then finally he heard it and he's like, Mr. Strawberry, I haven't heard that since I was 4. Oh, fuck.
I didn't even go that far, because I think Leland Palmer has a whole thing about that.
Yeah.
He met a guy named Bob who flicked matches at him or something.
The guy that flicked matches at him when he was a kid. So yeah, I think that's where I kind of pieced it together, because evil Coop is looking at the warden like, am I going to call Mr. Strawberry? And so my mind went to like, oh shit, this warden is not going to want to have a visit from Mr. Strawberry if he knows what's good for him. But we find out later, spoiler alert, that that's not what happened.
See, I wasn't even going that far. I was thinking like it was like a Lady G thing. Like, I don't know if you saw that with Lindsey Graham. A bunch of male prostitutes came out and were like, yeah, he's basically visited all of us. We call him Lady G. So I thought it was like something like that, like Mr. Strawberry was the name he uses when he fucking has gay sex with prostitutes or something.
Well, at this point it's up to your interpretation. It could be evil ice cream truck child diddler. It could be, your theory of, gay sex.
Well, it's weird, thinking of that, because until you mentioned that, I wasn't thinking of that scene with Leland Palmer. How much Bob is kind of like the Pennywise of Twin Peaks, almost. Like, I feel like they haven't gone into that enough, how much he's just been around forever and kind of in this town. Because I think we're supposed to assume that Leland Palmer was living in Twin Peaks as a kid when that happened. So Bob has just been there fucking with people forever.
Yeah, well, apparently the secret history of Twin Peaks gets into some of that shit. But
I wish there was more of that. Because, like, if you read it, you don't get it so much in the movies, but in the book, they go into the history of, like, this one place burned down, and they saw a clown in the background. Like, there's a bunch of, like the history of Pennywise's effect on the town. I wish we'd get, like, that with Bob, like, all the different people he'd possessed before Leland,
Well, you don't get that, but in episode 8, you do really get a kind of sense that there's been evil around for a long time and kind of where it started and where it came from and where it could be possibly now. So you do get a little bit of that. But also, this whole Pennywise thing, that's all, like, made up. Mr. Strawberry is not a ice cream truck diddler, as we find out in episode 7, maybe? I can't remember. But, spoiler alert, it wasn't a reference to anything other than a guy apparently named Mr. Strawberry who does bad shit.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. We're watching this piecemeal, and we're doing that thing where we're trying to figure like what matters and what doesn't. And you could assume that everything matters, you could assume that nothing matters, or somewhere in between. And we're both in that in between stage, but we don't know where the line is, and that's frustrating for us. I think because we're not trusting either David Lynch enough or the show enough to be rewarding. I mean, you know more than me whether you will find it personally rewarding, but I'm sitting here going like, okay, 119, is that going to be the answer to everything? Because I genuinely, I don't know how to feel about anything that's happening.
Yeah, it's weird watching the show on a rewatch with someone who hasn't watched the show, because, my expectations are already kind of low because I remember being disappointed by the finale. So when I'm watching it now, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is interesting, but I know where we're going, so even though I'm enjoying the journey, I don't think I'm going to like the destination.
I feel like, and people have talked about this, I'm not the first person to make this observation, but the idea of this being an 18-hour movie rather than a TV show, I'm definitely getting a sense of that at this point, where just the way it's structured, with the way characters are introduced and scenes are kind of cut through, it doesn't feel like every episode has a 3-act structure. It just seems like a series of scenes stitched together where I feel like if I stepped back from it and watched all 18 episodes in a row, which I would never have the strength or discipline to do, it would feel like that's where you'd get the 3-act structure. That's where the story would be.
Maybe. I don't know. But this definitely doesn't feel like a TV show. Like, episodes just kind of begin, and then they just kind of end, And, like, episodes 5 and 6, episode 5 ends with Dougie looking at a statue, episode 6 begins with him looking at that statue. It doesn't feel like there's a natural ending and beginning to these episodes. It all just feels like one big thing. Like, you know, and like I'm watching WandaVision right now, and the cool thing about that show is every episode ends with something where you go, oh, wow, I can't wait to see the next episode. Twin Peaks does not have that. It's just like you end an episode and you're like, huh?
Well, no, and with WandaVision, the brilliant thing about that is structurally it's training you, because like every episode is the next decade of television. It starts in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, and it's revealing its mysteries through that kind of repeated pattern. Whereas this feels like there's nothing like that in this show. It doesn't feel like episodes are discrete units. You know, it feels like, yeah, it just feels like just throwing everything in there. And you mentioned, like, why did he put the credits in there? I think that's because, like, he couldn't make an 18-hour movie. They wouldn't let him. Showtime said, no, it has to be a show. So he's like, well, the only thing that makes it a show is it starts with the theme song and ends with a music number.
It's just...
Otherwise, it's just an 18-hour movie.
So he just made a big-ass long movie and was like, okay, we're at the 50-minute mark, time to end it.
Invariably, we will.
Yeah, like, eventually, we'll just have a bunch of scenes, and then, time's a flat surface, so eventually we will get to some kind of end point. Yeah, these episodes just don't have any kind of, thing that pieces them together. What happened in episode 5? The same thing that happened in episode 6.
Assassin happened?
Yeah, we did get Ike the Spike, and...
Which, you know more than that. I'm assuming that's an incarnation of the little man from another place?
No, just because they're both dwarves?
Sure, go ahead. Fuck, because I'm not going to remember it. No?
Wait, what? Okay, I'm not sure what you're talking about, but if you're insinuating that Ike the Spike is just...
Well, I was assuming that maybe, like, in the same way that the people from the other place, the Black Lodge and White Lodge can possess human bodies, I thought maybe, like, he was, like, to the man from the other place what Dougie Jones is to Cooper, you know? Like he went into that body to act in the real world or something.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, so, like, the little man jumped into Ike the Spike's body to cause mischief? No, that's not what
Well, just like, I thought it might be another way that David Lynch would get around the fact that Michael J. Anderson hates him now, which did we talk about that?
Oh, you're a tree in the first episode, and I don't know, you're just another dwarf in the next episode. We'll just keep making you
Well,
things.
I don't know, okay, I don't know if we talked about that, because I don't know if I knew it then, because I found out about it recently. Well, I think we referenced the fact that he's like a Trumper now, but apparently he, without any evidence or anything, he accused David Lynch of, like, being a pedophile.
No, I did not know this.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of looked into it, like, he's just full of fucking shit. Now, we don't know why he's saying this, but, like, and, like, there's this stuff where, like, he brings that up now and says, like, that's why, because he's a fucking pedophile. But really, it's like he wanted to be on the show, but they wouldn't pay him enough. So it's like, well, now you're saying you'd have worked with the pedophile as long as he paid you enough. But, like, yeah, apparently that's, like, what precipitated the falling out is he just started accusing him of fucking a bunch of shit.
No, I did not know that. But no, Ike the Spike is not an embodiment of a lodge entity. He's just a dwarf assassin who loves a stabbing. And he gets so sad when his little stabby shank bends. I liked that scene. And then what else we get? We get a lot of Dougie Jones pissing.
And not only that, but she's like hitting on him and like, hey, let's maybe fuck later. And he's just like, he's holding his penis like a little boy. And then she hears him pee and she's like, oh, I'm gonna fuck that guy later.
Yeah, Dougie Jones is doing a pee-pee dance in the office, and the lady's like, oh, this is perfectly normal. I'll guide you into the restroom and help you pee, grown man. Yeah, I don't know if it's absurdity or what of why people are treating Dougie Jones normal. Like, did Dougie Jones act like this? I mean, I guess we did see him earlier. He was kind of goofy looking.
Was it you that was telling me about there was some theory that, like, the last 2 episodes, people would, like, put them together, like the Dark Side of the Moon with the Wizard of Oz?
Yeah. People have said that if you watch... a lot of people were saying certain scenes sync up, certain episodes sync up. But one of the theories I heard was that the last 2 episodes should be watched simultaneously, and they sync up. And then I saw another video where a guy was like, if you watch the first 18 episodes of the original series, that's the whole Laura Palmer mystery, like, because they basically solved the case in the 18th episode. So if you watch that,
well, I'm wondering,
along with the return backwards, whoa, it syncs up perfect.
I'm wondering if there is something to that, but not so much to the putting things together. I almost never think that's a thing where it's like, oh, if you line things up, they'll interact, because that would just be so hard to do practically. But the idea of maybe having to watch them in 2-episode chunks as sort of individual movies, because the way they released they released the first 2 and then the next 2, and then, I mean, you said you waited weeks after that, but maybe that was training us, watch them in sets of 2, because obviously the next 2 episodes, I mean, I don't know what episode 7 is, but I know episode 8 is this big mythology episode, so it's like I assume 7 will flow into that.
Yeah, and I said, I think we've stumbled upon the correct way to watch Twin Peaks: The Return. You watch 2 episodes, you podcast. You watch 2 episodes, you podcast. That's the way it was intended to be. We all know that now. It's fucking canon. No, because if it was like an 18-hour-long movie, maybe he did intend it to be like, 9 mini-movies. That could have been his intention. I don't know. Or, it could be nonsense.
I mean, at the very least, whether it's intentional or not on the part of David Lynch or the people behind it, I do think it's informing our viewing experience in a positive way. I think, at least more so than... Oh, I fucking forgot that they introduced fucking Diane in this episode.
Oh, right, Laura Dern.
That blew my fucking mind. Diane's a real person and not just a tape recorder.
Yeah, we finally solved the mystery of who Diane is.
In fact, I think I asked that in a previous episode. Like, Laura Dern's in this, isn't she?
Yeah, you did. I remember you said that.
Well, because I think I'd seen her. I think I recognized her, but I didn't know that she was Diane. I think I'd seen her in, like, clips or something. But, yeah. Fucking that. I mean, I was not expecting Diane to be a character on the show.
Yeah, I remember you were asking, is Laura Dern in this? And I was like, maybe. Yeah, she plays Diane, the woman who some thought was just the name of Coop's tape recorder. I believe in Fire Walk With Me they do establish that she is a living human being, because I think they make a reference to her off screen, like she's there.
Yeah, I always liked that it was either just the name of his tape recorder or like an imaginary, like a thought exercise sort of thing, that there was no real Diane. Part of his
daily affirmation, he has to talk to Diane because Diane was the name of his first love, and it's just this weird, OCD thing that's just part of Coop's character. But nope, it's a lady, and it's Laura Dern, so mystery solved. And you know what? David Lynch is kind of right. Sometimes when mysteries are solved, you kind of stop caring about it. Because I'm like, oh, now it's Laura Dern. That's cool.
Well, I think that's what we're ultimately getting at, is there is no right or wrong way to watch the show. Or if there is, David Lynch doesn't want you to know that, because that might ruin your experience either way.
Maybe. There may be no right or wrong way to watch Twin Peaks, but there's definitely a right or wrong way to record a podcast. And this is the wrong way to record a podcast. We're almost done, though. Alright, so I don't know what Ben's going to talk about next, but what else did I want to say about episode 6? I do want to talk about Scribbles. I love that we saw Harry Dean Stanton. Ike the Spike was good. Naomi Watts' scene with the gangsters was great.
It's...
The kid getting hit by the car. Oh, and Hawk finds the pages in the bathroom.
It's shot like a modern show in a way that doesn't feel like Twin Peaks. But yeah, structurally, it's much more like Twin Peaks than I think it gets credit for. Like the scene we're watching in the background now. It's got it's just like a bunch of drug runners and stuff, and it's like, it seems out of place. But then I remember One-Eyed Jacks and the Renault brothers and all that shit. And it's like, I don't think of Twin Peaks in those terms because I didn't care about any of that shit. Because I was just waiting for Bob to show back up. And that's kind of the same way here. I just want to see what's happening with Bob.
Right. I think that's because we got Fire Walk With Me in the middle, and that's all that movie is. It doesn't have any of the Packard Sawmill shit. So now that we're in the return, and we are returning to what Twin Peaks is and always was, it's just weird because when I watched Fire Walk With Me, I wanted more of that. I'm kind of the opposite of maybe everybody else. I think I like Fire Walk With Me better than the original series. But I know that's not what you're going to talk about.
The basic, first off, I didn't realize he would show up in this show, and I barely, because he was just in the movie, right? He wasn't in the original show.
Who are we talking about?
And I don't remember. Isn't he just the guy that owns the trailer park, right?
Oh, you're talking about Harry Dean Stanton. Yes, Harry Dean Stanton plays Carl. He ran the Fat Trout Trailer Park, which is where Chris Isaak disappeared in the beginning of Fire Walk with Me. But in the Secret History book of Mark Frost's, they kind of go into his backstory. And also in Fire Walk with Me, he says, I've already been places. So seeing what we saw in this episode, maybe that means something else for me.
Okay. Oh, wait. So, because this is the first time, other than, I guess, I mean, I never made any connection between his character and what happened to Chris Isaak. I assumed he was just there. But now he's more closely tied with the supernatural elements. He's seeing ghosts rise up out of the dead bodies. Are we saying that he's a deeper part of the mythology now?
Yes, that's what they go into in the Secret History book. Harry Dean Stanton's character and the Log Lady were children, and they were both missing for 2 weeks. And when they came back, they said they had no memory, but they both shared a tattoo. So it's kind of canonical that they've both been to the lodge.
That's another thing that I wish we'd gotten more of in this show, is elements of the supernatural beyond Bob and Mike and the little man. Like there was the old lady and the little kid who were clearly something weird and mystical.
Chalfont.
And all the other people in the convenience store, that weird dude with the white mask with the pointy nose. Shit like that. I want more of that to come back. And so the idea of that Harry Dean Stanton's character was that all along. I like that. I like that he's something mystical, or at least he's tied to something mystical.
Yeah, or there's just weird shit going on, and it's not just Agent Cooper and Laura Palmer who experience it, I like that, I don't want to get into spoilers, so I'll say that. But Major Briggs in the original series, I like that, he got into the lodge too, and he knew some shit. And then you'll see that in this series too, pieces do start connecting, different parts of the story, the weird shit starts coming together. And on that same line of thinking, shit's starting to come together. Something kind of important happens in this episode. Hawk finds a clue in the bathroom.
They didn't say what it was. Well, it was some pieces of paper, but I don't know. We didn't get an indication of what it was. So obviously, I assume that's something important. I have no context to know what it would be.
I believe we're going to find out soon what was on those pieces of paper. But yeah, Hawk found it in the bathroom.
And he sees an Indian, a brand name of the thing on the door, yeah.
Yeah, Nez Perce is his tribe, and the Log Lady said it would have something to do with his heritage that lead him, so he finds the piece of the paper in the door, rips open the stall. How did they get in there? I don't know. And then Chad comes in to take a shit.
I'm liking him more and more. I don't like that. They introduced him as he's almost like a Leo-esque character at this point. He's taking money from the guy. So I don't know if I want it to go that far. But I just like that they keep cutting back to him to just be the shittiest person in the world. When he's talking about Robert Forster's kid and making fun of him for killing himself. I like all that shit.
Yeah, Chad is he was introduced in either episode 3 or 4, but he's one of the deputies at the sheriff's station. Brand new character, and yeah, he's just the world's biggest asshole. And apparently he likes taking shits in the ladies' room, because he walks in and there's Hawk looking for shit, and he's like, what are you doing? I'm taking
obviously,
shit.
Whatever this paper is important.
Yeah, well, I can't remember how important a part it plays in, the plot of this series, but it is something important. Once they reveal what it is, I won't spoil it. But it's weird watching this show, because you're never sure. You think Hawk finding something in the bathroom is going to be something big, or maybe it's not.
And that's the thing, because we had a whole scene that you looked away and didn't even see it happen, where the one lady who gets killed, who we never found out who she was, had this weird beeping box that shrunk into this little jewel or something, and it's I want to think oh, that's got to mean something, that's got to connect to something, but I don't know who this character is, so I don't know why this is important at all. And I'm going to have to remember that 4 episodes from now when they finally remember to come back to it, if they ever do, you know?
Yeah, I don't think they do. I don't think that box ever comes back. That's why I wasn't even looking at it when it was on. They showed the box, and then I looked at something else, and then you're like, whoa, that was weird. It disappeared or turned into like an egg. And I was like, it did? I missed that part. Yeah, I don't know if that ever comes back or not. I don't think it does.
Well, I mean, I think on the larger metaphor of Scribbles, maybe. But at the same time, I do think that's all over this show, too. I keep talking about all the moments that feel like he's mocking the audience for their desire for answers.
It's all Scribbles.
And the Scribbles are definitely at least partially that.
Scribbles.
But at the same time, I think they are also a legitimate pointer to where the show's going. So it's like, I think in some ways, having his cake and eating it too. He's telling us we're silly for watching the show as obsessively as we are, but he's also saying if you do it long enough, you might get the answers.
Yeah, because, alright, so let's talk about the Scribbles scene. So, Dougie hands papers to his boss that are just covered in doodles. And then his boss is like, what the fuck is this that you handed me? And then he says something like, how am I supposed to make sense of this? And then Dougie, because he's fucking brain dead, just repeats, make sense of it. And then so he just starts looking at it and studying it. And then he's like, oh my God, that's it. I figured it out. And he's like, thank you. And the music swells. It's a funny fucking scene. But I can't get away from this fucking Scribble scene as something more, like a metaphor for the show itself. The Scribbles. Because there's so much fucking Scribbles in this show. Do I pay attention to the Scribbles, or do I pay attention past the Scribbles? Are the Scribbles important? Are the Scribbles pointing me in the right direction? What am I supposed to focus on?
I don't know. I was watching that scene differently. I wasn't... Well, I mean, I guess in retrospect, maybe, but at the time, I assumed that was setting up a joke where he was going to punch the guy in the face because he saw it in the poster.
What? Oh,
but obviously that doesn't happen.
Okay. Yeah, you're talking about battling Bushnell Mullins. I remember the point I made earlier, or the point I made 2 weeks ago. When I watched this show originally, people were looking at the poster of battling Bushnell Mullins, and they were thinking that was a clue, like that was a setup for something. And it's probably not. But maybe it is, because David Lynch was sitting in front of the nuclear bomb.
Then I think we go back to what I was saying earlier, where it's the disconnect between what the audience knows versus what the characters know in terms of the context of what's being presented. This guy in the show knows more about what's on that paper than we do, because he knows the significance of the stuff that was written on there before the Scribbles.
True.
All we know is that there are Scribbles and that they point to something significant. We just don't know what the significant thing is or how to get there. So, it's the idea of, I think it's just the idea of trusting the narrative and trusting the characters to figure this out in due time.
So,
But I know enough about Twin Peaks to know that I can't trust that.
Exactly. So it's like, so you're saying, don't worry about the Scribbles. The Scribbles are there, but it's alright. The Scribbles are good. They add to the paper. And eventually, if you look at the Scribbles enough, a clearer picture will form, like a fucking magic eye painting. But yeah, I know it doesn't. I know it doesn't. So what am I getting out of this show? I have no idea. And I don't want to make it seem like I'm not liking watching it. It's just it's a weird journey destination thing. I'm on the journey. I know where the destination is, and I'm not sure.
If there's anything in this that points to a larger rubric for how to analyze the show, I feel like it's the bunny. I think we're going to get to a point at the end and go it was about the bunny after all.
Right, that would be great if at the end he just pulls a bunny out of the hat and he's like, yep, this is what was missing. It was all about the bunny.
I mean, I feel like, again, I think that scene and this scene are similar to me in that I see them both as jokes on the audience, rather than sort of significant moments for the audience. But I don't know, the more you talk about it, the more I think maybe it is.
I think both of those scenes, the bunny scene in the last 2 episodes we watched, and the Scribbles scene in these 2 episodes we watched, I don't think those scenes are just random. I think those scenes are meant to be dissected. Not everything in the show is meant to be dissected, but I definitely think those two scenes, they have to be, because David Lynch has to know that people want answers. They want answers to the mysteries. They want everything revealed. They want the magician to show his hand, and he's not going to do that.
Oh, see, well, I'm not seeing like the entire show as that. I'm seeing it more, not so much cynicism towards the audience. There are a few moments there, more about cynicism about the nature of modern television itself. The darkness of this show, I feel like, is a commentary on what David Lynch sees as the state of modern television relative to what it was when Twin Peaks was on. I think the fact that, like, it seems like the love has gone away from Twin Peaks in the context of the show, and in the tone of the show in a meta sense, I think that is definitely intentional on David Lynch's part. I think he's trying to say something about how, you know, those moments in the original Twin Peaks where there was, you know, charm and that music would swell and we would feel for these characters in this small town hokey way, independent of whatever we thought about the mythology. The fact, like, that doesn't exist anymore. And it's not in this show, and when it is in the show, it feels wrong, and because it's not in TV anymore. TV isn't that earnest anymore, and I think that's, at least on some level, that's a major theme of this show.
I don't know if I agree with that or not. I mean, in a way, I do. But if you hear David Lynch talk about Twin Peaks, you know, he kind of sees it as that core mystery, and then when that mystery was solved, it killed the show.
Well, certainly in terms of the narrative, yes. I'm just talking more about, like, the tone and the themes, like the thing that he wants to get across emotionally with this story rather than textually. I think he wants to establish a baseline of, like you feel that TV's gone off the rails a little bit, don't you? Just like I do. Like, that's kind of like the fact that do you not get that sense that Twin Peaks has been corrupted, and that's maybe a larger metaphor for the state of television?
I think you're remembering Twin Peaks as a rosier show than it was. There was cocaine and drug deals and prostitution and horrors all over the original series. Like, it was a dark show, especially for 1990s standards. I think that's part of the reason why it was so groundbreaking and revolutionary, is because, like, nothing like this was ever on TV before. People tuned into it and they were like, what the fuck is going on? And it was new and different. And then, you know, whatever. We can talk about the history of Twin Peaks at some other time. But no, I don't think the subject matter has gotten darker. I think the tone of the show has definitely gotten darker. The look of the show, the feel of the show.
Well, but no, but I think, like, when you saw that kind of duality in the original Twin Peaks, it was sort of an extension of the duality that you see in stuff like Blue Velvet. Like, the very first scene of Blue Velvet is, like, the white picket fence, and then you go down and there's, like, bugs in the ground and shit. It's like the darkness and the light. And I think you get that. Obviously, that's a big part of Twin Peaks with the Black Lodge and the White Lodge. And Laura Palmer's character is this sort of, you know, the bad girl and the good girl, and the two worlds that she lives in. All of that stuff, it was there in the original show. And with this show, I feel like it's saying that, like, there's no more light anymore. It's just darkness.
I don't think so. Well, I mean, in some of these episodes, I can definitely get that feeling. But there's some light moments coming up.
Well, and I would just say, for the record, that's also from that Twin Perfect video, but I think I would have come to that conclusion because I was kind of feeling that in the first couple episodes before I'd watched that kind of cemented it, but no, I think that's what this is leading towards. Like, just the fact that the Roadhouse is just, like, that used to be a place where, like, it was fun to be, and, like, you would solve the murder there, and now it's just, like, fucking horrifying.
I mean, I guess you can definitely interpret this as David Lynch's commentary on television in general. But also, it could just be he's telling a story and we're not even halfway through.
I think anything that seems like an element of mystery has some meaning. I think there's a lot of stuff in here that doesn't have narrative meaning, but it has emotional or tonal meaning. There's stuff he puts in here just to get you to feel a certain way, so that when a mysterious thing comes up, you're in the right headspace to figure it out. But, like, the stuff that definitely feels like 119, there's no emotional thing to that, like, that's going to make you feel a certain way. It's just, that's a clue for something. Everything that seems like a clue is a clue. If it doesn't seem like a clue, it's probably not.
Yeah, but then you're going to be looking for clues where there aren't any clues, you know? Are you going to get any clues in the Norma Jean scene? Maybe. Maybe that all connects to something. You don't know. I mean, the Giant did give us 3 clues at the beginning, but, you know, there could be clues everywhere else, you know? The magic quarter flipping guy.
Well, not so much the guy with the magic quarter, but I think I'm focusing on the differences more than the similarities. Like all the Dougie Jones stuff and the darkness and the gruesomeness. My attention is drawn to that more just because it seems like that's different. Therefore, that seems to me like that's what David Lynch wants to say with this. He wants to highlight that weird, darker tone for a reason.
Yeah, well, I think he always was fascinated by that. I mean, like I said, you rewatch the original series. It's fucking dark. I mean, it's not as dark as this, but that's just because this was made in 2017. That was made in 1990. But anyway, that's the end of our discussion of episodes 5 and 6. I apologize for the stupidity of what this was, but the alternatives were re-record an episode that we talk about 2 episodes that I barely remember, or not release anything altogether for episodes 5 and 6. But in all honesty, if you're doing a Twin Peaks rewatch, not a lot happened in episodes 5 and 6, so you can probably skip them anyway. Nah, watch them, they're good. You get some fucking Robert Forster classic shit. But, so, anyway, thanks for listening. Next week's episode will make more sense. Get off the shed.
Mm-hmm.